Welcome back, I'm Ed Bell at the Song Foundry and I'm excited to introduce Christyn Budzyna today in this episode about lyric writing.
Hi there, and that's right, we're here with the 5 most important things that we think make a great lyric. In episode 5, we talked about how creativity is discovery. When it comes to writing lyrics, this means finding exactly the right words that you want to use. One of the biggest challenges as a lyricist is saying what you want to say, all while rhyming and doing other nifty tricks. This can be tough. But one of the worst and most tempting things that you can do is to prioritize those nifty tricks so much that the words you end up with don't quite sound natural or don't quite make sense. Meaning has to come first. Everything else is secondary. It can also be tricky because sometimes it takes a few tries to find exactly the right word. Often there are lots of words that essentially mean the same thing. Ride, wheels, and automobile all mean car, but they have slightly different nuances and slightly different connotations. It's up to you to find the exact words that say it best for your particular song.
We've talked before about how a song is a person saying something to someone else, so a lyric has to sound like a person speaking and not like an essay or a poem on a page. That's why it can be effective to use slang words in a lyric, to use words like or ah, or use incomplete sentences like you would in speech. It's also why it's not okay to twist or distort words to fit a rhyme. If you say, "To Boston we will go," instead of "Let's go to Boston," you'll have a hard time making your song believable because nobody speaks like that. The words you use have to make sense live. One part of finding the right words is choosing words that fit the image or character of the person who's singing. A rapper might describe something as dope, but if they use the word spiffing, we might not buy it. And that brings us nicely onto thing number 3.
It's your job to come up with the specific words and phrases that belong in your song and only your song. That's how you tell your song's story and create specific situations that have universal resonance, like we talked about in episode 4. And it's another way to make bold choices that make your song unique. There are lots of ways to be specific in your song. Specific details, specific images, specific metaphors, even specific philosophies. It's way more engaging to say, "I like your hazel eyes," than "I like you." It can feel frightening to commit to specifics in your song. It's a little easier to say something bland in general that could belong in any song, but those specifics are what bring your song alive. Listen for how this works in your favorite songs. Details are everything.
In a lyric, we're much more likely to notice what you say at the beginning or end of a section than what you say in the middle. Similarly, a word at the beginning or end of a line, especially if it's rhymed, is much more prominent than a word stuck somewhere in the middle. You can use this to your advantage by putting important words at the ends of lines and your most striking or important lines at the beginnings and ends of sections. We already looked at one way to do this in episode 7, where most of the examples put the hook at the very beginning or end of the chorus. Another common way to use this idea is to open a song with a bold, intriguing, or even provocative statement. It's a really great way to hook your audience in. Listen out to how it works in some of your favorite songs.
Many great lyrics seem underwritten or even too simple on the page. That's because setting words to music is always going to make them feel heightened, so you can afford to keep a lyric simpler than you might think. Art is the elimination of the unnecessary, and often the most honest and powerful words also happen to be the simplest. The more you write, the better you'll become at saying things in simple ways. Sometimes the first try comes out kind of wordy, but with a bit of playing around, you'll find a much simpler solution. Filler words, words like just so or really, that don't add any meaning, are especially worth watching out for. They're common in normal conversation, but in a lyric, they tend to dilute your meaning. It's often better to leave them out or replace them with something more specific. You might feel like you're losing out on something by cutting, but the simpler you say something, the more impact it will have.
So there we go, our top 5 lyric writing tips. If you want to know more about the art and craft of using words, there are some great ideas in a little old school book called The Elements of Style by William Strunk and E.B. White. And as usual, there's also much more in the Art of Songwriting, our ebook. Thanks to Christyn for appearing in this episode. Thanks to you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!